maybe March, but here in Oregon, it definitely feels like January, like every year. Don't be misled by the sun. It's like 30 degrees outside. Okay, it's more like 45, but you get the point. Hello everyone, it is Samantha and I hope you guys are having a fantastic day so far. I'm here today to share with you guys, finally, all the books I read in February, which was 5, and that's amazing since I only read 3 in January, and even more amazing because my reading goal this year was 1 book, so I'm killing it. And as always, I like to start these videos out with a few statistics for you guys. So without further ado, let's dive into the numbers. So as I just said, I read a total of 5 books in February. 3 of them were fantasy, 1 was an anthology, which was fantasy anthology, and 1 of them was a science fiction book. In February, I read a total of 2,462 pages, which averages to about 496 pages per book, and about 79 pages a day. In terms of format, 60% were trade paperback, 20% was an ebook, and the other 20% was a mass market paperback. In terms of the book status, or in how I acquired the book, what type of book it was, 3 of them were used, 1 was a gift, and 1 was a new ebook. In terms of star rating, 2 were 3.5 stars, 1 was 3 stars, and 2 was 4 stars, so a pretty okay reading month in all. And that is it for the numbers. Now I get to tell you guys what books I read and what I thought of them. The first book that I read in February was Myron's Gift by Fiona McIntosh. I actually did a full review of this book, which I will link somewhere in this video down below or in a little card thing that you can click on. But needless to say, I overall enjoyed this book quite a bit. The story follows the young general, Weil Thirsk. He comes from a long line of generals. Father to son, this position is passed on and they are set to lead the nation's legion, the kingdom's legion. Weil ends up becoming general after his father's untimely death when he is about the age of 14. He is sent to be raised at the capital by the king himself and is kind of told to try and get along with the young prince, who is a very willful, selfish, and cruel young man. And of course, they hate each other. The hatred between them is solidified when Salamis forces Weil to watch the cruel and unnecessary execution of a young girl named Myron. She's accused of witchcraft and is killed and tortured and burned at the stake. However, though she herself is not a witch, somebody else does in fact channel power through her and is able to lay a gift upon Weil. However, this gift soon appears to be more curse than gift. Fast forward a few years and Salamis is in power and he basically sets about to make Weil Thirsk's life and all of his family and friends' lives hell. And that's kind of where the story takes off because Weil soon discovered what exactly this gift is that Myron gave him. So overall, I thought this was a pretty fun fantasy book and series. I read the other 2 books this month as well, which I'll get into a little bit later. But it is definitely very tropey. This book definitely relies heavily upon fantasy tropes that you find in a lot of fantasy stories, but I tend to enjoy that. I grew up reading a lot of the older fantasy stories, so I kind of like harkening back to that era of writing style. So overall, I really enjoyed it. This book in particular does get a little romance heavy, and I'm not the biggest fan of a lot of romance elements in my books, but it wasn't like obnoxious. It was just enough for me to be like, okay, really? So it wasn't terrible. So the plot itself is pretty fun. I thought the plot was actually fairly original and it was really fast-paced and engrossing, and I definitely felt invested in Weil's character and what was happening to him, even though at times he could be a little bit frustrating and I wanted to like shake him and knock some sense into him, but you know, you can't because it's a book. I felt that the characters themselves are pretty well drawn. They're, for the most part, follows Weil's perspective, but occasionally you do get another character's perspective, such as the young Gong boy, and I have to say I actually really enjoyed all the side characters. They added a lot to the story. They helped support Weil's character, and it just kind of made for an even more engrossing and engaging story. So overall, I ended up rating this book a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. It was definitely a fun read, even though I can recognize that it really wasn't the best written book. It could have been a lot better. In terms of characters, I rate the characters 4 stars. In terms of plot, I rate the plot 4 stars. The writing, I would give 3.5 stars. The world building, I would give 3.5 stars because she definitely was not the best describing the world that this takes place in and the culture that these people come from. So for an overall rating of 3.5 out of 5 stars. So it was a fun book, not the best, but one that I definitely really enjoyed reading. Soon after I finished Myron's Gift, I immediately picked up A Blood and Memory by Fiona McIntosh. This is book 2. It picks up immediately where that one left off, which was on a little bit of a cliffhanger, and where you really start seeing Miles' gift take off. I don't want to give too much away because what the Myron's Gift is a very, very, very big plot point that will kind of give a whole lot away. This book was okay. I would say it was just about as good as Myron's Gift. It felt a little bit like I had more filler than Myron's Gift did. It also felt a little bit more slower paced, but I still enjoyed it overall. So I ended up giving this one 3.5 out of 5 stars. For plot, I gave this one 3.5 out of 5 stars. Writing, I gave 4 stars. The characters and their development, I gave 3.5 out of 5 stars. And the world, I gave 3.5 out of 5 stars for an overall rating of 3.5 out of 5 stars. And because I was now invested in the series and what was happening to the characters, I immediately had to pick up book 3, which was Bridget Souls. And this one was probably my favorite in the trilogy. It really wrapped everything up quite nicely. It definitely led to a happy ending. It was a very stereotypically happy fantasy ending, but I like that because sometimes it's nice when everything kind of ends on a happy note. So I really enjoyed that about this book, the way that all the various plot lines ended up culminating and all of the secrets and the questions you had from the other 2 books were answered. So I really think that she wrapped it up quite nicely. Some people might think that it was a little bit too nice, a little bit too pretty and nicely wrapped and bowed, but I myself quite enjoyed that. Sometimes it's nice to kind of end a series on a happy note, you know? Not everything always needs to be bleak and sad, so I quite appreciated the fact that people could live happily ever after. So overall, I ended up rating this one 4 out of 5 stars. I gave the plot 4 stars, the writing 4 stars, the characters 4 stars, the world building 4.5 stars. She definitely got better about that in this book, and for an overall rating of 4 stars. So overall, I really enjoyed the series. If I had to rate the whole trilogy, I would rate it about 3.5 stars. I think it would be a fair assessment. It's not the best series, but it's definitely a fun one. So if you're looking for kind of a fun, traditional fantasy story, then this one is definitely for you. It doesn't have any diversity in it, and it definitely relies heavily upon fantasy tropes. But if you're looking for a fantasy trilogy that's easy to get into, if you're not especially familiar with fantasy, or one that will be a fun, quick read, then this is definitely the trilogy for you. The next book that I ended up reading in February was This Book is Full of Spiders by David Wong, which is actually the pen name of Jason Pargin. So this book is actually the second book in the John Dies at the End trilogy. However, you can read the second book without reading the first book. It was actually the book club book for my book club at work. It was the one that everybody voted for. I was a little apprehensive about it because I absolutely hate spiders and I refused to look at the book cover, so I bought it on ebook and on my Kindle, so I did not have to look at it. And I have to say I was actually pleasantly surprised. They're not really spiders. And when you read the book, they're actually described as being more crab-like than spider-like, so that kind of helps. I just pictured lobsters instead of spiders. Anyway, but I really enjoyed this story. It was fun. It was not like the best book at all by any means, but it was one that will make you laugh and is fast-paced and is somewhat entertaining. It follows our main character of David, and him and his friend John basically have the ability to see very odd things. These weird shadow men, people disappearing. They know about wormholes that can make them travel from one part of town to another. And one day David wakes up with this crab-like spidery creature biting his leg. Nobody can see this creature. And then he soon discovers that they're more like a parasite because they're basically trying to take over other people and make them look like zombies because nobody else can see that there's a spider thing controlling it. And him and John have to kind of figure out how to save the world. So the story itself, if you guys are familiar with the Blood and Ice Cream trilogy by Edgar Wright, which is Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and At World's End, starring Nick Frost and Simon Pegg, that is very much what this book is like. It's like a combination of Shaun of the Dead and At World's End, and they stack them together. The characters of John and David are very, very similar to Nick Frost and Simon Pegg's characters, so it definitely has that same type of humor, the same amount of goriness to it, but I thought it was a pretty fun book, and I overall enjoyed it. I ended up rating it a total of 3.5 out of 5 stars. I gave the characters 4 stars, I gave the plot 3.5 out of 5 stars, the setting that it took place in 3.5 out of 5 stars, and the overall story itself 3.5 out of 5 stars. It wasn't the best written book. It could definitely be a little bit choppy and jarring in the way that he was telling the story. It was also told in first person perspective, which, though humorous because David was kind of a smartass, also left a little bit to be desired when you're trying to figure out how other people were thinking and processing the information of what was going on in the world. So it wasn't the best book, but it was definitely a fun read. So if you're looking for something quick and fun, then this would probably be a good book for you. And the final book that I read in February was actually one that I started way back in November, but then I was reading it off and on, and because it was an anthology. And that was Invitation to Camelot, which is an anthology of Arthurian stories that was edited by Park Godwin. I actually received this from my lovely friend Dustin as a Christmas gift, so thank you, Dustin. I really enjoyed this book. As you guys know, I love King Arthur stories, and I think this one was definitely made for me because it's also published the year I was born, which was pretty fun, 1988. So it was like it was meant for me, but I really enjoyed the stories. There were 3 or 4 that I didn't really care for. There was 2 that I actually skimmed through. One because they were kind of writing in like a Middle English style and I was having a really hard time following it and I wasn't super engrossed in the story, so I kind of skimmed that one. And then there was another one that I think they were trying to be funny. It had to do with this psychologist that time traveled back to Camelot and was basically trying to psychoanalyze all of the Arthurian characters, but it was really annoying. And so I decided to stop annoying myself and skim through that one. But the rest of them I really enjoyed. I like seeing these different authors take on the various Arthurian stories. So everybody kind of had a different twist to the Mordred story or to King Arthur himself or Gwen or Lancelot. And I thought that was a lot of fun and something that I really quite enjoyed. So overall I rated this whole anthology about 4 stars. It was definitely a fun read. If you love Arthurian stories like myself, I think it's definitely one that you should check out and kind of read a story here and there because it's something that's really fun. I think one of the reasons why King Arthur stories live on and have lived on for 1500 years is because everybody can kind of take something from them and make it new and different again, make it just as exciting as the original stories. And I think that's why this legend has lived on for so long, just the versatility of the story and just what you can do with it and the characters. And I think that definitely shows in this anthology. Alright guys, that is it for my February wrap-up. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing it and what I thought of the books that I read in the month of February. You have to let me know if you've read any of these and what you liked or thought of them or what your favorite book was for the month of February. I would love to know. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely day. Until next time, happy reading. Bye!